Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun Bun, and this is our From Season 3, Episode 10 finale reaction and review. Oh my God. What an ending. What an ending.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much to talk about. We've got Tabitha and Jade reincarnated over time. They have a daughter together. There's the men in yellow. Julie's time traveling, just coming back from the past to try to save her dad. We have Smiley back of all the people. Was so excited to see him. That actor is amazing. I absolutely love him. He's so terrifying. I was so happy to see him back.
Yeah.
I was like, yes. And I mean, it all makes sense now. So much of these threads have been put together. And to top it all off, it has been renewed for season 4. It is coming back in 2026. I know there's a lot of people out there that were like, oh my God, it's so long. Why is it taking so long? But I mean, the writer's room has to get everything together. Pre-production has to get everything together. American Thanksgiving's coming up, and then it's Christmas. And who wants to film in Nova Scotia in January and February? You're going to be under 25 feet of snow. You got to wait a little bit to be able to get out there and film properly. Some time for post-production, and that brings us to 2026.
Yeah, it's going to be a long way. Like, there's no denying that. But I think if this show can continue the quality that they had at the end of this season, especially this finale, which I think is outstanding with our "you man in yellow, you big evil banana, you." Like, there is so much good stuff that will be on the way. Obviously, a million spoilers within. Okay, so before we go any further here, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I know From is ending, but there is another show coming to MGM Plus in just 1 week in Earth Abides. It is a dystopian sci-fi drama. It looks to be a 6-episode limited series, at least for now. We know how that goes. But it stars Alexander Ludwig, who I know Jess loves Vikings. He was very big on Vikings. That's just yet another reason for you to be excited.
I love Vikings. It is my favorite show. If you have not seen it, it is excellent. So I'm really excited about Earth Abides. And also, we are covering Dune Prophecy, and it is exclusively in video form, weekly reviews over on our Patreon. We will leave a link for you below.
Yeah, speaking of Vikings, you know, your guy Travis Fimmel over there on Dune Prophecy.
Oh my God, Vikings is my favorite show. If you have not watched Vikings, 10 out of 10 show. I watch it a million times. It's so good. Okay, let's get into the man in yellow who showed up. This is someone that Jim heard on the radio who was like, I told you not to let your wife be digging that hole in the basement. And he has shown up here basically being like, you guys have too much knowledge now. So now there needs to be a shift in that power here to bring more balance back to Fromville. You can't have as much knowledge as you do, so you have to go.
Okay, I just have to say first and foremost here, we should have all seen this coming last week with Jim. Jim was suddenly getting the redemption edit.
I know.
It's sort of like on a reality show, you know that person's about to be eliminated when they start to get that edit.
Yep. He
got the redemption edit. He gets offed by the man in yellow. I think it's fair to say at this point that Jim is dead. I mean, is he gone from the world of From? That's a hard thing to say just because this show is so unbelievably weird. Now, who is this guy?
Yes, who is the man in yellow? That's the big question. So tinfoil hats, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that he is the person that is sort of the overseer of all the monsters who all used to be either parents or, you know, people who are taking care of the children who sacrificed their children to be able to live forever. But because they sacrificed their children, they came back as monsters. I think that this man in yellow is almost like a djinn or a genie or somebody who's like, oh, okay, you get a wish. What's your wish? Oh, I want to live forever. Okay, cool. You have to do this dastardly thing and then you can live forever, but you can only come out at night. You're going to be a monster and you have to kill people. It's almost like, you know, oh, you get 3 wishes. What's your wish going to be? Like over on What We Do in the Shadows when Nandor was like, Oh, I want to have a big pee-pee. Oh, okay. You want to have a big pee-pee? No problem. It's going to be 25 feet long and the size of a Coke can. Hope you like it. You got what you wished for. And that's what I think he is.
How did we get Nandor the Relentless or Nandor de Laurentiis in the middle of this video?
Because that's what it feels like.
I know.
It feels like this guy is this genie who's going to promise you whatever you want. What do
Yeah.
you wish for? Oh, I wish to live forever. Cool. You're going to live forever, but you're not going to like what you're going to get. You'll get your wish, but it's not going to be the way that you want it to be.
So what's interesting to me is I think it's just because of whether it's Harold or whether it's because of the producers. I always reflect on Lost with this show, and I mean, it may just also be Man in Yellow, Man in Black. Like, I'm going to get those inevitable sort of vibes. Now, if Titus Welliver shows up at some point from season 4,
God, please.
what if Harry Bosch is entering Fromville? But no.
Okay, so who do you think is the Man in Yellow?
Here's really the truth of what I think is happening. And I don't think it's actually that different from what you're saying. But what I'm kind of doing at this point is I'm going back in time generations to some like undetermined amount of time. Because you look at the way in which some of these people, the monsters, all of them are dressed. And it doesn't feel to me like, this is something that's been going on for centuries. None of them look like they're infantrymen or something in like some event a long, long time ago. But we have like a nurse. And it feels to me like these outfits could be out of the 1940s, 1950s, maybe kind of sort of somewhere in that era. I feel like we're in a situation where once upon a time, we had a group of people who went out together to experience something. Maybe they were all going on a big, massive trip, and this is all kind of connected to Miranda and everything else. But they went and did this where the Man in Yellow was sort of the leader. And maybe he is a Jinn, maybe he is somebody who had some sort of supernatural ability. Maybe he is powered by sort of the sins of a lot of these people. And he basically got them all to commit the most egregious sin possible in exchange for this idea of eternal life. Now, here's where things get kind of complicated, though, and this is why we can't take a giant brush out of the art kit here and paint the entire world of From with that brush, because I think it's complicated depending on the person. We have these monsters that are living forever, but then we also have people like Tabitha / Miranda. We also have Jade / Christopher. And I don't think personally that, Christopher and Miranda are the beginning of this by any means. I think that they are versions of people who were there before, who maybe got a different fate from the beginning, who maybe made a different choice when it comes to sacrifice, or they weren't allowed to make a choice at all. And maybe the consequence of that is they continue to have a hope that their souls can be free, as opposed to these monsters who have just sort of been condemned to live in this constant state of, you get to live forever with all your monster buddies, but your life is terrible when you're a monster.
Yeah, which explains why we've got Smiley back. Because if you can live forever, then he can't die. He made this deal and he gets to live forever. So Fatima gives birth to Smiley and we get to keep Fatima, which is great.
Yeah.
But we also got Smiley back, which is also great because he's so terrifying. But talking about what we learned, that Jade is, Christopher, Miranda, and Tabitha are the same, and that the past, it seems like Tabitha and Jade had a daughter, and that the daughter seemingly to me was this Angui daughter that came towards him when he started playing the violin. They figured out that, all the little slips of paper that are in the bottles, they're music notes. And if you play it, the Angui children will come out, and here comes this daughter, and they start to remember everything. Now, here's the big question. Is this Christopher and Miranda's daughter? And for me, tinfoil hat, I don't think it is, because we know that Miranda was married to Henry and that she had Eloise and she had Victor. So were they there then long enough that Miranda was then cheating and having this other child and Victor wouldn't have known about it? No, it feels more like, Christopher and Miranda were there at the same time, but maybe they were, like you said, they were here before as
Yeah.
well, and before as well, and before as well, at the beginning, where they did have a daughter. And maybe they decided when the man in yellow was like, hey guys, you want to
Yeah.
live forever? No, we don't, because you want us to sacrifice our daughter and we're not going to do that. And he was like, okay, well, you've made your choice, but we're still going to take your kid. And instead, your consequence is going to be that you're going to have to keep getting reincarnated, coming back here over and over again, and you'll have to try to figure out what happened. But we're never really going to give you a chance to figure out what happened.
Yeah, and that's what makes all this so juicy and so interesting at this point. But here's how I'm trying to make sense of all of it, because yeah, this can be very, very confusing as we get further and further into it, talking about generations and people inhabiting other people. So the original Christopher and Miranda, they're sort of like Alpha Christopher and Miranda. And then you have the real Christopher and Miranda. And then you have sort of the 2.0 here, which is Jade and Tabitha. Who knows if there's other generations in there, but I'm right there with you that I think that whatever happened with this Ngui child, I think this was before Christopher and Miranda went there, that they're not the original person. Now, I mean, we can get into the weeds of, oh, is it a pure reincarnation? Is it just like a part of somebody's soul inhabiting another person? Is Tabitha still her own person? Then you're getting really weird and philosophical. And for the state of this show, it probably doesn't matter all that much. Tabitha's memories, though, are still her memories. It's just going to be a hard thing for her to figure out moving forward, because this town has been constructed in a way where she cannot figure it out, but there's still hope.
Yeah, I mean, they have going into the next season, now that the man in yellow has shown up and was just like, "Oh, Jim, you know too much, you got to go."
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but Jade and Tabitha also know all this information. So,
Yeah.
are we just going to have the man in yellow coming in and just kind of killing everybody, or is there going to be a reset at this point? Because they gave us so much information with
Yeah.
the reincarnation, with the children, with sort of the what was going on with the monsters, because now Boyd watched Smiley come back. We have Julie time travel. There is so much information given to the people of this town that I don't know how in season 4 they don't figure out how to deal with it. They have so much information. This man in yellow just killing off Jim.
Yeah.
Jim was sort of like the lowest guy in the bar here at this point. Like, he has information,
Yeah.
but the people that can continue to tap into even further information, Julie, Tabitha, Jade, they're still here and they're still tapping in.
Okay, I'm going to continue to go down a Lost rabbit hole here since I've already done it. We had the man in black, we had the man in white on Lost. We have the man in yellow, we have the boy in white on From. And I
Yes.
think that the
He's
boy
going to be the man in white by the time we end up in 2026.
from season 20 is going to show up. Man in white's is going to have like this giant beard. He's going to look like Santa Claus.
Right.
No, I think though that the boy in white does represent an element of hope. And I think that from the very beginning, there's always been at least some sort of counter resistance to the man in yellow that's going on here. There's always been some sort of way to get people out, because I mean, Tabitha's already gotten out. So it's theoretically possible that it can happen again. But I think in the aftermath of all of this, what we're going to see, tinfoil hat here, is we're going to see Jade and Tabitha really work together, I think, to try to make as many people believe as they possibly can, because I think the boy in white, sort of almost like any other symbolic figure, spiritual figure, no matter what you want to think about it, belief is as strong as anything in the world. If you believe in something, you can manifest it, you can try to make it real, versus the man in yellow. He's got all of his people back. He's got Smiley back. We know that they're very smart. I think he's going to be like, okay, you guys thought you were playing From on hard mode in season 3. Now we're going to take it up yet another notch. I think the more and more people know, obviously, the more danger things are going to be coming, and the more just insane the show has to get, because they have to continue up the stakes, because otherwise we're just going to grow numb to it.
Yeah, I mean, they decided to kill off Jim, who didn't really have anything to do this season except, put his hands on everybody and yell at everybody until he had a 1 episode redemption arc, and then he got killed off. I mean, how weird would it have been going into next season? It's like Tabitha then had been with Henry, Jade, and Jim, and they're all in town.
That
Okay, but we don't have to deal with that because Jim is not there anymore. But let's talk about Julie, because
okay.
Julie and her story of being able to time travel, we had her have this conversation with Ethan where Ethan
Yeah.
was like, oh no, yeah, okay, you're this person who's able to sort of story walk and go back into the past and take a look
Yeah.
at pages or whatever. And she was like, okay, so I can go back and make sure that this never happened. Ethan's like, nah, it doesn't work like that. You can look, but you can't actually do anything.
Yeah.
I was just kind of sitting there with my tinfoil hat being like, how do you know that? You don't know that for sure. Like, you think you know that,
Yeah.
and that might be the way it is. And I hope that that's the way it is, because if she can just go back and change everything, then Julie's just the key to the whole show, right?
Yeah.
But if she can't change anything, it makes it more interesting. Like when we saw her come back to try to save her dad, her hair is different and whatever. So it's Julie from the future
Yeah.
coming back to try to save her dad. No go.
There's a lot to unpack with Julie at this point. I mean, first of all, we talk about this show making things more complicated than they need to. I made what Julie was supposed to be way more complicated than what it actually is last week. I was trying to dance around this idea of time travel, but I will say this, and I'm somebody who, has watched and enjoyed a lot of time travel content over the years. Like, I really liked Legends of Tomorrow. I love Doctor Who. I'm a big Whovian, but those shows have the time and the bandwidth to deal with all the sort of rules of time travel and how you can make it complicated and all the butterfly effects and all of that. I really hope, like you, that Ethan is correct. I mean, maybe Ethan has an element of clairvoyance. Maybe Ethan is reincarnated as well or something. He just knows. But I really hope he's right, because I don't think this show can handle a situation where Julie, whether it's new hairdo Julie or not, can come back and just change everything, because then the show kind of loses its point. Like, to me, the most interesting outcome of this, and it could actually be useful and not too confusing for the show, is to have Julie at some point go back to the beginning, and then we can actually see how all this really came together. And also, if you're Julie at this point, you gotta be interested in this. Like, I would find it very, very hard to believe that she's not gonna do that. It would be sort of like, I wake up tomorrow and somebody tells me I have the ability to fly. I'm not gonna then fly around and like see the ocean or any of that. I'm just gonna sit around. No, I'm gonna freaking fly. I want to see the show do that.
Yeah, and I'm also really curious if this means that this can happen for Randall and Muriel as well, and that because we're seeing future Julie, is it possible that Julie has then gone and told the other two, by the way, we can
Yeah.
do this. If we go to this ruins, it helps you be able to see different things from the past and move around or whatever. Let's all go and take care of business, where we can all go to different timelines, start to gather more information, that they are more of like sort of the truth seekers, where they're like able to go back, see what's going on, put pieces together from the beginning to help the people that are there in the present to actually get out. Because it's all going to go back to the beginning of how this all happened, how they all got together, how they all got stuck, who sacrificed which children,
Yeah.
who the man in yellow is. They need answers, I think, on him to be able to stop all of this, because it feels like he's very much the man in charge.
Yeah. And every person, at least we're thinking about this from like a video game super boss sort of analogy, there's always a weakness. There's always something you can exploit. And if somebody's just invulnerable, that's not as interesting. That's why Superman needs his kryptonite. But to talk even further about Randall and Marielle, who has been the biggest, I think, question mark for a ton of people out there all season long, just because of her refusal to really talk about things. I think there's a couple of different ideas at play here. There's idea one, which you just mentioned, which is okay, maybe they all can time travel and they can be these truth seekers, which would be interesting because these three continue to have nothing in common. And yeah, Randall and Julie had an entertaining storyline earlier this season, but they're always going to have different opinions. The other thing I wonder about, and this is sort of big picture too, with all of From, because I don't think everybody who's in From is a reincarnation. I don't think it's that broad, because then you have to sort of explain something like, okay, then Sarah's a reincarnation of somebody who is getting her to do bad things at one moment and then getting her to try to be a hero and then trying to get her to do some, it just doesn't, there's no consistency there. And so I think it would be really hard to explain that. But is this almost like, this is a crazy comparison. Is this almost like The Boys, where every time you take Compound V, you get different powers? Every person who goes into From, you get different powers, where you are somebody like Julie, you can time travel, versus you're somebody like Randall, which right now your superpower just seems to be, here's a bunch of bugs that you don't know how to control. Is Marielle just capable of turning into a hamster? Like, I don't know why, but that's my point though. Does everybody have different abilities?
And I think that they do. I
Yeah.
think that those three were chosen for a reason
Yeah.
to, see the cicadas and everything that had happened.
Yeah.
I feel like they all have the ability, but do they all want to actually harness the ability? I mean, Marielle doesn't want to even talk about it.
Yeah.
Randall was like, I'm not going over to those ruins. They don't feel right. And he's
Yeah.
dealing with his own stuff. So maybe Julie's like, okay, I'm going to be the one then. I'm going to harness it, see how it works, see what I can find out, because I want to get out of here and I'm willing to sacrifice myself to make it happen. I think it's the same thing of what Sarah was talking about when Boyd was going to do what he was going to do to Elgin to try to find out where Fatima was, where Sarah actually was like, I'm going to be the person to do it. I'm the monster of this town. I'm
Yeah.
the person that everybody expects that's going to do stuff like this. And I've already done stuff like this. So if I've already given up my soul to this town, then I'm going to be the person that's going to help find Fatima. And when she had that conversation with Elgin, she was kind of like, we were chosen for a reason
Yeah.
to have voices in our heads that are trying to manipulate us and push us into doing these really terrible things, because we are the people who are kind of like the most wholesome, the kindest, the we want to believe in the best. Like, that's who I was before I came here. That's who you were before you came here. There's a reason that we have these special powers, we'll call them,
Yeah.
that they are talking to us specifically. You were chosen because we're the same.
I would like to extend an invitation now to everyone who has not been on Sarah Island with me to come and join. The water's fine. It's very clear now that Sarah is going to be incredibly important next season.
Yeah.
I am so excited for that, mostly because, and you sort of lined this up, Sarah and Elgin now have shown that you can break free of whatever is controlling them. Like, their ability in being in the town is not a good ability. It is we have been chosen to commit these sort of dark acts, but this also shows us on some level that the monsters, because we've seen Kimono Lady occupy a few different forms,
Yep.
the monsters are capable of doing something like this on some level. And I don't know if they get to just pick and choose based on whoever comes into the town or not, but it's something that they all kind of have to be aware of. And this brings us into, lo and behold, something that you have talked about a lot this season. Everyone just needs to talk to each other. If Sarah and Elgin can go up there, deliver their own version of a press conference and be like, this happened to us, so if you guys start seeing X, Y, or Z or whatever, do not trust it. Don't follow its instructions.
That's the most interesting thing that I'm feeling coming out of this finale, where the man in yellow shows up.
Yeah.
Jim, you know too much. I told you guys to stop digging. I have to bring in more balance, so you gotta die.
Yeah.
But then you've got the Cicada 3, who I think all have the same ability to be able to time travel. Right
Yeah.
now, we know that only Julie is doing it, but all three of them have the capability of having that information. I believe that they all do.
Mhm.
So you have the three of them that have all that information. Then you have Elgin and you have Sarah, who are both being spoken to by the town because they are kind of the wholesome innocence of the town, where now they've both done terrible things.
Yeah.
And terrible things to other people in the town. So they're capable of being manipulated, but also listening. Now they know what's going on. They can listen to the voice and use the voice to communicate to other people, like what Sarah did, where she's like, oh, the voice is back telling me
Yeah.
about Fatima. Instead of me doing something bad about it, I'm just going to go tell Boyd. And so now we've got these 5 people that are all connected.
Mhm.
to the town that all have different abilities. And we haven't even spoken yet about also Jade and Tabitha,
Yeah.
who have now so much information about who they are, who they were, their past. You've got
Yeah.
all these people now that can all come together with different
Yeah.
abilities and ways to look at the town and things that have happened to share that information with everybody, where they can all use these things now to be able to fight back against the town, against the monsters, and against the man in yellow. And I think because the man in yellow, for me, I think he is this sort of genie overseer that does have an incredible amount of power. He can talk to people and manipulate people and grant wishes in these horrible ways
Yeah.
that they really need these powers to be able to fight him.
And this is where it all brings us back as well to the boy in white and this idea of belief. Because if these people can all come together and believe in this common good, like I think this furthers along the path of the boy in white, the path of hope, but then it also sends a message to the rest of the town. And yeah, I'm going to get crazy here. Who's going to stop me? This town, everybody else probably has some sort of ability or something that they can give because they're all there for a reason, right? So I feel like if they can all surrender themselves really to the idea of where they are, that nothing makes sense and that's the way it's supposed to be, I think they're all going to discover things about themselves. Not all of them are going to be good, but I think they all have something more within them than they are really aware of. They just need to believe.
And they need a leader or a couple leaders.
Yeah.
Like if Boyd and Donna can get together and get together these 7 people to get them all to share information and harness their powers and use those powers to get even more information. Clearly the man in yellow is very afraid of them having as much information as they have at this point, that he's willing to show up here and deal with Jim, the person who has the least amount of information, but he's still willing to show up at this point and show himself. Julie now knows about him as well. Like, how's he going to deal with that? Julie can now pop back in time and go and tell Boyd what she saw.
I just think that the potential for season 4 and beyond now, with these people and the knowledge they have and the abilities that people have and the undiscovered abilities that could still be coming, this can be really, really lit. But before we do sort of wind down this video and this season, there's a couple of scenes I just want to spotlight in particular for how good they were. And one of them is Victor and his father, because it was so tender, and it reminds me of one of my favorite scenes of all time in television. There was a show on Showtime called The Affair, and not all of it is good. Let me make that very clear. There are a lot of things on that show that are very, very bad. But the finale,
I remember you having a love-hate relationship.
I have
with
a very love-hate relationship with The Affair. But in the finale in particular, there is a scene where one of the characters talks about the nature of love and how love can withstand generations and how love and presence can overcome sadness and trauma. And you may not be able to change the past, but you can be there for your child. You can do something now to better shape the future. And every time I think of that scene, I always get emotional. And it's just, the scene reminds me so much of that, because it's, Henry can't change the decades that he was not around Victor. Victor can't change the time that he was alone, but that doesn't mean that Henry doesn't love him. That doesn't mean that Henry can just come back into his life and be there for him and have this presence, and Henry making it clear to him that everything that happened in the past, you were just a child, you didn't know, you were just trying your best. That's, I think, a profound moment for this show. I think it surpasses this show. I think it's just a real message of love for all of us to take away, and the fact that From, a show so dark, is still capable of so much love. It's such an emotional concept, and it was just so incredibly acted, so well written. And I'm gonna stop now because I'm gonna get choked up talking about it.
No, it really was. And yeah, in a show like From that is so dark, and now we have reincarnation and we have time travel, and we have, teleportation through the trees and monsters, like all these crazy things, wild things, to have these really emotional human moments mixed up in just like insanity really makes this show special, that they're able to balance that out in a way that I don't know many shows that would be able to.
No, and I think that scene was just beautiful. And from an acting perspective, I'm just glad that they had a couple of minutes in the finale where they're like, okay, this is the finale. Everyone clear out. Harold, here's your couple of minutes to just cook everything he was doing with Elgin. It made sense for the character, but it was just also, Harold, what does it take for you to get the recognition as an actor that you deserve after so many years?
I know. I mean, he was one of my favorite characters on Lost. I loved him in Romeo and Juliet. I love him here. He's just amazing. And I'm so glad that this season was so popular for MGM Plus. It is the little show that needed word of mouth. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody, get your dog watching, whatever it is, to continue to grow this show so that Harold can get his flowers. I mean, there's a lot of people on the show that deserve their flowers, but for me, nobody more than Harold.
Yeah, and I think he's embraced this fandom so much, and
I know.
His celebration of the renewal was great. It's just like
I know, the video with the little bottle tree. Oh my goodness. Like, he's a treasure.
And I just so glad that he has this role. I'm so glad that this show exists. There's still a lot of questions too. Yeah, we got some information. I think we have a reasonable sense question mark as to where things may be going, but that's great for a show like this. I don't think they can string this along forever, but they gave us enough that I am fully on board the ride. I'm so excited for where things go from here. I think this was a really, really strong finale.
Very strong. I know there was some in the fandom that were complaining that we weren't getting enough answers. It was taking too long. It's 3 seasons. I had felt that the ride was so good. Like, I didn't need answers in season 1. I was in for the ride. By the time I got to season 2, I was continuing to be for the ride, and I got just enough answers to get me into season 3. I did not expect them to give me so many answers in this finale, like a crazy amount of answers. So if I see anybody out there complaining that you're not getting enough information, please just stop.
Yeah, this was, I don't know. What do you want? The show to give you everything at the end of this, but then the show's over.
Yeah, then it's over. We're not going to have a season 4, 5, 6, 20.
Yeah, I think there's potential to at least get a few more seasons out of this. That's what I'm hoping for. I like long running shows. We need more of this in this society, but that's where we are with From coming out of the season 3 finale. Thank you to everyone for hanging out with us all season. This has been a great time, but hit that subscribe button as well, because like Jess said, we're sticking around MGM Plus here for Earth Abides. Also have Dexter Original Sin coming in addition to Silo happening right now, and you can support us further by joining our Patreon and checking out our exclusive video coverage of Dune Prophecy. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you here next time.